That was President Joe Biden holding a press conference with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. I'm Jason Johnson, in for Ari Melber. Joining me now is Shannon Pettypiece, senior White House reporter for NBC News Digital, former RNC chair Michael Steele, and Chris Hill, former ambassador to South Korea and Iraq. Thank you all so very much. Shannon, I will begin with you. So where was this sort of prioritized in the meetings with world leaders for the new Biden administration? Was this sort of his foray into sort of a new series of discussions with Asian leaders, or was this something that had already been kind of planned from the moment he got into office?
Well, it certainly shows this president and this administration's focus on Asia and Southeast Asia, and underlying all of that, China, of course. The first foreign leader visit he had was the Japanese prime minister. This is the second foreign leader visit, and White House administration officials say, make no mistake, that has to do with China. You heard the president mention that a bit about trying to secure the Taiwanese Strait and trying to address some of the aggression that they are seeing from China. And, you know, the focus so much has been on the Middle East, and you certainly heard the president talking about that. But this certainly is an attempt to get the focus back on Asia and China, where the president sees the biggest threat from a foreign policy perspective to the United States.
Shannon, when you saw this press conference here, did you see, is this sort of the emergence or the attempt to sort of lay out what might be an Asia policy for this new Biden administration other than containing China? Did you hear anything here? Was there anything sort of laid out that might give us a blueprint going forward?
Yeah, I think this is the most in detail we've heard the president talk about his North Korea strategy. The administration said they were going to review it. They conducted a review, and now they're starting to lay the groundwork for their strategy and what it's going to look like on North Korea. You heard President Biden say that it will not be easy. He has no illusions about striking some sort of deal, that it is going to be hard work. You also heard him say that he is open to meeting with Kim Jong-un, but only if there are conditions, only if it is tied to talking about denuclearizing the peninsula. He is not going to do what his predecessor did, and he called that out quite pointedly, saying he is not going to give Kim a higher profile on the international stage if the U.S. and the global community don't get anything in return. So he made that point, and also made the point that the goal is still denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Administration officials told us going into this, though, that they are not looking for some grand bargain right away. They are fine with some incremental progress they can make. They're not taking that approach to the Trump administration where they think they can solve this overnight. Instead, they're looking to take a progression of steps toward some progress towards denuclearization.
I want to bring in our former ambassador here to give us some perspective. So from the South Korean perspective, obviously there is a huge difference between President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. From the perspective of President Moon, is this something that he embraces? Is he looking at Joe Biden as sort of a reset of American-Korean relations? Was Trump much of an anomaly? What did you hear from his part of this press conference that we just listened to?
Well, look, the Koreans are very good allies. They've been allies for a long time, and they'll work with whatever president this country chooses to elect. That said, I can assure you they are very relieved to be dealing with Joe Biden. A couple of points there. I think they were a little nervous in the last couple of months when this kind of review of the North Korea thing went on. And I think what they were worried about was seeing the rock, go right back to the base of the hill again, and we'd have to, start from zero. So naming a special envoy, a very familiar face for them, Ambassador Sung Kim, who was U.S. ambassador in Korea. He was also one of the special envoys who dealt with the North Korean issue. Must have been a great relief to the Koreans, so there won't be much learning curve for Sung Kim. I think they were also looking for kind of ally-to-ally type talk, and the concept that we're going to really work with them on the COVID vaccination issue. President Moon did a great job early on in containing the virus, but there's been an awful lot of criticism of him in terms of the vaccination. So this is really helpful to him. I would keep in mind one thing President Biden said during the press conference, which is, I'm not in the habit of telling everybody what was said behind closed doors. And I suspect there was a lot said behind doors about what are we going to do about China. The Koreans have their own kind of tough experiences with China. They go back about 4,000 years, but they've also gone back just a few months when the Chinese kind of threw the book at them over over this deployment of U.S. missiles. So I think they probably had a very serious discussion. They don't want to see all this great break. They don't want to see this decoupling that you hear about in think tanks, but they want to see that, we got a strategy. And I'm sure they're very, very pleased to be talking to President Biden today.
And Ambassador, I want to follow up on this because I thought the vaccine discussion was quite fascinating. You had President Biden saying, look, we're going to vaccinate over 500,000 people, Koreans who have direct contact with the military. In the United States, we're dealing with massive vaccine hesitancy depending on demographics and political ideology. Is there vaccine hesitancy in Korea with the idea that they will be getting a vaccine from America? Because I know in the United States, if Joe Biden said, yes, we're going to get 500,000 versions of a vaccine from South Korea, Americans would freak out. So how's that playing in South Korea?
Well, I think it's pretty clear the Koreans have a supply problem for a number of technical reasons, and we have a demand problem. But the president did say, look, I don't think we're going to have a demand problem. So I think he's being a little careful about how he kind of rolls this out. And the idea is giving vaccinations, giving doses away to the Koreans. So they very cleverly came up with this idea, hey, we're going to take care of the Korean army because they're the ones who work with the Americans. So I don't think there'll be a lot of complaining in the U.S. that somehow we're giving away doses and not getting anything in return. So I think that was pretty clear. And if you can take away 500,000 people, and that is the size of the Korean military force, and take care of those people, that kind of frees up supply for the Koreans. But I mean, most of all, this is a huge issue in Korea right now. They're coming around to presidential elections. All their presidents are term limited to just one term, so it'll be a successor to President Moon, but nonetheless from his own party. So he's very interested in some good news. So he's coming back with a lot, especially in terms of these two countries working together. And there's one other point, and President Biden alluded to this, which is the Koreans talk regionally. This is not just a little country that worries about the Korean Peninsula and that's it. They are all over the world. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world. You see Korean business, you see Korean missionaries, and in particular, they talked about the broader Indo-Pacific space. So, it's really a good feeling for the Koreans to have these serious discussions. And of course, it comes on the heels of the serious discussions that the president had with the Japanese prime minister just a month ago. So I think Korea is feeling that they're being well treated. And I think President Biden had a very good feeling. He seemed very upbeat at that press conference. So all good.
So, Michael, I'm going to ask you by comparison, right? So the previous president, Donald Trump, he had sort of combative relationships with North Korea and then friendly relationships and was praising. In fact, he seemed to spend a lot more time talking about North Korea than South Korea. What you're seeing from Joe Biden today, where he seems really chummy with President Moon, where he talks about how they get along, where he makes a reference to K-pop. He didn't say anything about BTS. I'm more of a Big Bang fan. Was that sort of establishing this new tone that we're seeing from the Biden administration, a return to normal? Or do you think he'll eventually change his view towards really discussing North Korea specifically as well, like the previous president?
I think both Ambassador Hill and Shannon have put this in the right context. And it could be summed up in what President Jae-in said. He said their conversation with President Biden was a conversation of old friends. And I think that's an important signal. Is the shot heard around the world, if you will, about a reset in this relationship, where North Korea was the dominant player because of the intentions or whatever of the Trump administration. This President Biden understands from his own long-term relationships around the globe, and particularly in this space, coming to the table and saying, we're going to do a reset here. We've got the big issues, the nuclear arrangements, we've got, the COVID, the sort of healthcare issues, we've got the huge economic issues with China. We're going to reestablish our relationship with our friend and our partner in South Korea with this President Jae-in, and we'll move forward from there. In North Korea, if you're ready to play and talk to us, then you come correct, right? Right. You show us that you want to be in the league that we're in. No more of this false promising and pushing you up and putting your profile out there without consequence. So I think this was an enormously important turn for the U.S. and South Korean relations. And I think the ambassador nailed it when he talked about, not just the nuances of it, but more broadly, what this may mean for us going forward.
Michael Steele stays with us. NBC's Shannon Pettypiece and Ambassador Chris Hill, thank you all so very much for coming through today.